background and what motivated you to make this film? Why did you want to tell a story about resistance and why Marcel?
Well, first of all, thank you for having us. Thank you, everyone, for coming here. It's very special. The movie came out during COVID, so not a lot of people saw it in the big screen with the right sound. So it's a very special screening. Even us sitting there, we were very impacted by the film. So thank you, Stand With Us, and of course, the consuls of Germany and Israel for bringing us all together. It's a really special night for all of us. Um, I am the grandson of Holocaust survivors. The Holocaust has always interested me, but I have always been afraid of tackling the subject matter um, because of how emotional and personal it was for me. I read the story of Marceau, I think, on Twitter, and I was shocked, first of all, that he was Jewish. I didn't even know that, and that he saved children in the war. At the time, I happened to be traveling to France for the Cannes Film Festival. We were showing my prior film, Hands of Stone, and I thought, if I'm going to France, maybe I can do some research. And I was able to track George Loinger, who is Marcel's first cousin, who goes into the butcher shop and invites him to help him with the kids. He was 106 years old in Paris, completely sharp. And after Cannes, we traveled to Paris, and I sat down with him for about an hour. And a lot of what you see in the film came directly from his testimony. He always wondered why I was making a movie about Marcel and not about him. And he definitely deserves a movie. But after that meeting with him, I felt that I could do nothing with my life other than telling the story, be, be, before it's too late. And unfortunately, George was not able to see the film. He passed away at 108, but his kids saw it, his family saw it. And that's how we started, and I started writing it and did a lot of research too, and went to Lyon, to the Museum of the Resistance, and to the Holocaust Museum in Paris, and it was pretty emotional process all the way, and I have to say, especially for the consulate here, when you're a writer director, the first thing you do when you finish writing a script is think, how in the world we're going to make this movie? And as the grandson of Holocaust survivor, the last thing in your mind is that the Germans are going to help you make it. And we ended up having full backing from a German production company, from the Bavarian Film Fund in Germany, gave us the first 2 million euros to make the film, and the film could not have been made without Germany.
And can you share with the audience about your aunt and how one of the characters was inspired by her story?
Yeah, my aunt Elizabeth, is children of the Holocaust. She was 4 years old when my grandmother gave her to some priests to hide, and she was the orphan that you see in the movie. She learned to sing in the choir. Eventually, she was adopted. She was not part of the kids that Marcel saved. She was adopted by a Polish Catholic family, and after the war, my grandmother was able to track her down, and for that child, her parents were her adopted parents. So seeing this strange woman she doesn't remember seeing ever, and being told that that's her actual mother, has been an extremely difficult experience ever since. But she's my mentor. She gave me the first good movies that I ever saw, and she's 84 and lives in Florida, and it definitely inspired that character.
We want to bring this film to Florida and invite her to join us for the screening.
Let's do it.
Claudine, can you share a bit more about the what's so special about the Bavarian Film Fund funding and also your partnership with the Louder School in Prague?
Well, it was really interesting because when we were looking for funding for the film, you would be surprised that not many Holocaust films get the amount of funding they should. And I just leave that to the audience because obviously we need to do more of these types of films. And we reached out to the Bavarian Film Fund and we sent the script and they supported us immediately. And they've never given the full funding to an entire film, and they gave it to Resistance. So we were extremely honored that that was, you know, the result of the
They
collaboration.
usually support like 15 to
15,
20 movies
yeah.
a year. And that year they gave
They
the
gave it
entire
to us.
fund to Resistance.
Yeah, so that was pretty amazing. And then when we shot the film in between Czech Republic and Germany, and we shot in 5 different cities. And when we were in Czech Republic, scouting and casting, Jonathan needed some kids to play the kids that you see on screen, which are Jewish, and they're and we needed them to learn all the Jewish songs, and it was quite complicated because we did an open casting and we got all these kids in, and when we started singing in Hebrew, they spoke Czech. So it was like, how do we do this? You know, we wanted to be real, and we wanted the kids also to feel comfortable. So Jonathan said, we need to approach a Jewish school. So we went to the Lauder School, which is a Jewish conservative school in Czech Republic, and we went through a process, and we went with our casting director, and we met all these fantastic kids and their parents, and it was really interesting. All of them came in their costume and in character because all of them came from Holocaust surviving families. So we didn't need to explain what with film and what it meant and what we wanted out of them. All of these kids were non-professional actors. So when Jonathan did the first rehearsal with Jesse and we started singing all the Hebrew songs, they just went on and just sang for hours. So we were like, okay, our job is done. We don't need to do any rehearsal with them. And we got them on the road, and their parents came to me and said, you know what it's like to have Jewish kids with you on the road in Germany? And it was like, yes, absolutely. And my daughter was also there. Jesse has his kid there. So we were like a big family, like a big circus family. And the only thing they asked me, and they said, we will let our kids go and do this because it's very important for us and for our family and what the message of the film is. The only condition for you to take the kids is that you do Shabbat. And I said, deal. I do Shabbat with my daughter. That's not going to be a problem. So we took these kids on the road, and we did Shabbat in every city we were, and they didn't want to go back, so their families called me and were like, my kid doesn't want to come back. Can they just stay with you? And I'm like, sure. So we became a really close family with the kids, and nowadays they're very proud of what they did, and they enjoyed the film so much. It was a really amazing experience. Oh yeah, we can't see it there. Yeah. Oh, about the Shabbat ones.
And
Yeah.
I think it's important to mention that when we did Shabbat with the children, the German crew came as well. And we saw many of them in tears looking at Jews doing Shabbat while making this movie.
In Germany.
In Germany. Many of them have never seen a Shabbat ceremony in person. And when you see the last scene when Jesse is performing, that is the Congress Hall in Nuremberg. It is a stadium that Hitler was building for himself. An entire Coliseum is the size of the Superdome, and there was to be a podium in the middle and nothing else. An entire stadium for Hitler to stand there. He didn't finish it because he lost the war, but we used the backdrop for that incredible scene with Jesse, and it really felt like a creative vengeance against the Nazis, that we were in the temple of Hitler with Germans, Jews, and the grandson of a Holocaust survivor performing a pantomime by Marcel Marceau for saving the children.
And
Every-
also that performance, like Jesse's last performance, was even more inspiring because a couple of days, the day before was the Tree of Life shooting of the synagogue. So we were there performing, and Jesse had also friends that he knew that had passed on the shooting. So we were all there watching Jesse perform, kind of saying, you know, this is us and we're here, and we just want to tell you that.
Resistance.
Yeah. Like,
Was it hard to film in Germany? And we heard you had some incidents there. Can you say what happened?
I mean, every single moment you're in Germany is emotional, even as a tourist. But when you are shooting this film, like you have to picture, like I'm looking at these images 14 hours a day. And then we cut and we are in Munich. And we were living at the time 3 blocks away from Hitler's apartment in Munich. So the whole thing just feels extremely personal, extremely real. I don't think there was a day that most of us didn't cry on set. And even though it was a very joyful shoot, everything was extremely emotional for us and for the Germans too. Just to give you an example, one of the department heads who was German told me that he found out when he was 15 that his grandfather was a high-profile Nazi. Every German tells you the moment when they found out. It's a moment in their lives when they find out what happened, when they confront their parents or their grandparents, depending on how old they are, when their parents tell them, yes, it was like that, but we didn't know anything. When then they go to the school and tell their professors, and the professors tell them everybody knew everything. And when they go back to their parents and confront them, and they have to admit that, yes, they knew some of it. This department head, who was German, at 15 when he learned, he flew to Israel and spent 7 years working in a kibbutz in order to help the Jewish people. Those are the Germans we work with.
And Claudine, can you explain what happened one day on your set in Germany?
Yes, well, it was, I'm going to say it very general, not to go into specific details about it, but one of our sets, which was the kosher butcher shop, we were in a town, and we got a little bit of a situation outside, got a little bit vandalized, not very much. So we had to have a conversation at the town hall and explain that this was a film, that we actually weren't putting a kosher butcher shop in the town. And we kind of had to go through a process of explaining that it was a film, and we ended up getting support from the town and getting more security in it. But definitely it was, you know, a very uncomfortable situation, but the town was extremely collaborative and helpful during the entire shoot, and they were very welcoming. So it was just that instance that we quite didn't know where it was coming from.
Jonathan, after the Holocaust, your family fled to Venezuela, those who survived. What happened that made you leave Venezuela and come to America?
Well, Venezuela was a really welcoming country for Jews. One of the few in Latin America that, you know, didn't like literally open the doors to Jews. And my family thrived and made a living there. But then in 1998, there was a man called Hugo Chavez that took power. You may have heard of him. And things got a little complicated. When I made my first film, Secuestro Express is a Venezuelan film in Spanish language. The movie became, pretty successful. But the government didn't like it, and they started opening trials against me and against my family, and then they started saying on official national TV that the movie was part of a Zionist conspiracy to overthrow Hugo Chavez, even though the movie is about a kidnapping and there's no single mention of Jews or anything like that. And, obviously my grandmother and all my family are very quick at reacting to words like that. And then Chavez in Congress, in his State of the Union address, he wondered why I was still roaming the streets in freedom. So it was a very easy decision to leave. Um, and things got pretty difficult for Jews in Venezuela. There were raids in the Jewish school, supposedly looking for weapons, and they were very constant aggressions and attack. And Chavez ended up making a very close alliance with Iran, which lasts to this day, and it's far bigger than anybody seems to realize, because Venezuela is providing the uranium for the nuclear program. And there were 45,000 Jews in Venezuela. There's now about 3,000 who are still there in a situation somewhat similar to the Jews in Iran, a little more comfortable, but it's still pretty difficult.
Even when it's not about the Jews, it's about the Jews.
Yeah.
Well, we're here in Los Angeles now 78 years since the liberation of Auschwitz, yet we're experiencing an all-time high in anti-Semitic hate crimes since the Holocaust on an international level. Does that concern you, and what do you think can be done about that?
It definitely, obviously concerns me. I think it's, when I first moved to America, I was honestly surprised by how comfortable Jews were here. I think this is the only country in the world where Jews can afford to be anti-Israel. I've never met an anti-Israeli Jew. And it's only because Jews are so comfortable here that some feel that they don't need Israel. And when you live outside of the U.S., outside of Israel, and maybe of the United Kingdom, anti-Semitism is a constant of your life, and in Prague, we were asking the parents of the kids, is there anti-Semitism in the Czech Republic? No, not really, and he was wearing a kippah, and I asked him, so you walk with the kippah in the streets? He said, oh, no. I go, why? Because I would be attacked. He goes, so there is anti-Semitism. Well, only if they know you're Jewish. Okay, good to know.
And it was bad for business.
Well, he was a banker, and he said, also when I'm in the bank, I take it off because they would never give you their money, if they know you're Jewish, So I'm like, that sounds like anti-Semitism all the way. But it is, it is a constant, and I feel like the United States is now waking up to what most of the Jews of the world have lived, for decades. It is unfortunate, but it really concerns me, but I still think we are the luckiest Jews of all time, to be in a moment where we can have a strong country and where we can be in the United States, and proudly be Jewish. But I think the line from which you go from being comfortable to being afraid is broken in a matter of years. Like in Venezuela, there was absolutely no official anti-Semitism. You had your dealings, but there was never official anti-Semitism before 1998. It was the opposite. And by 3 years later, everybody started leaving, because it was like, this is getting ugly, So it was very shocking for me to see how quickly things can change. Things obviously never got as bad as in other places, but when you see, or little experience with Kanye West, the other day, the Nazi formerly known as rapper, that's, I feel like a before and after. It is easy to dismiss because he sounds stupid, but it is the most important recording artist of this generation, openly saying anti-Semitic stuff. And we were lucky that he said Jews and not Zionist, because he wouldn't even have been controversial if he had chosen the accepted word for anti-Semitism. If he had said Zionists control Hollywood, nobody would care. It would be a little controversial. But he said Jews, and in a way, that woke up a lot of people, a lot of my friends who are not Jewish were finally, okay, maybe you're right. There is some anti-Semitism in the US. But it's definitely becoming more acceptable, more mainstream. I think we need to stay aware. We need to support foundations like Stand With Us, and we need to yeah. And I think we need to support each other. It's very it's very divided here. I see the United States, like there was never a question in Venezuela if you were reform or conservative or orthodox. There was certainly not a question in the trains going to Auschwitz, you're Jewish or you're not, and for some reason the United States has all these divisions between Jews that I find shocking, and part of my effort to mix it up on screen, and some have payas, some do not, some wear kippah, some do not, is because of that. It's not about our differences, and that is something that unfortunately we are reminded in every generation. And I think it's something that Israel was just reminded last month. It's like they thought they could fight between each other, and surprise, they can't, because there's more enemies than allies. And I think it's an important thing that we need to do. I think it's an important thing that we need to remind our friends in Israel that it's not about division. It's about the fact that we are one people, and it will always be one people.
We have one question I'm going to take from the audience. It's from one of our Stand With Us high school, Kenneth Leventhal interns. She goes to Eula Girls here in Los Angeles, and her name is Maya Wertheim.
Hi, first of all, thank you so much for such a powerful film. I'd just like to ask, what are some of your suggestions for how we can resist anti-Semitism proactively?
Well, I can say, as a mom of Jewish children, I also think that teaching our children that they have their Jewish background and they always have to be proud to be Jewish and not hide just to assimilate or to just be part of a society because they're going to get bullied or because they shouldn't say where they are or where they come from. I think it's a big part. I think we need to create strong children, and these children to be proud Jews and proud Zionists and support Israel. I think also as a mom is one of the things that I'm constantly thinking of.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very hard, to know what's effective. But I think if there's something the movie teaches us is that it doesn't matter how big the events going around you are, you can always make a difference. That's why I fell in love with this story, because their conclusion is we may not be able to kill Hitler, we may not be able to fight all the Nazis, but we may save lives. And I think what's important is to deal with your surroundings, to deal with your friends, with your group of friends, Jewish and not Jewish. If they are being discriminated against for being Jewish or for being gay or for whatever reason, stand up. It never ends with one minority. Every single time a minority is persecuted, the rest follow. And that is something that Jews have learned better than anyone, and it's something that I think is important to teach to everyone.
Pride in the face of hate and being an upstander, the two big lessons for fighting anti-Semitism. Thank you both so much for being with us tonight, and they're going to be with us in the dessert reception if you have any questions for them.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.